Well, for those of you who are just starting to read this, Trial by Fire, it's a really terrific story. I can't recommend it highly enough. It's by the same guy who wrote Killers of the Flower Moon, David Grann. The writing is terrific, and the story is as well. It's about this guy. There he is in his jail cell. He'll get executed. Oh, in about, what is it, about 10 years out. So there he is in 1994. You know, kind of a big, white, trashy kind of guy. Tattoos, all that. Cameron Todd Willingham. Cameron Todd Willingham. We'll get used to that name. And so the first part, I love the way this thing is written. And I recall reading it, what do we have? Gosh almighty, 10 years ago. It's a great story. And the first part, you will get to the end of this, as everybody has, and you'll come to the sense that, yeah, execute this guy. What he did is awful. I mean, it really is a ghastly, ghastly event. And so it opens up, and we are going to be moved just like the jury, most people will be, to sentence him to death. So that ends part one, and you know, it's pretty ghastly. These three beautiful little babies here die in a fire, and he is convicted of lighting the fire to kill his babies so he could have, who knows what, more time to drink beer or whatever. So it's a pretty ghastly thing. And then things sleep for a while. He's in jail for almost 5 years, practically. And then this gal, Elizabeth Gilbert, enters the scene. And her role is that she became a pen pal with somebody on death row, Cameron Todd Willingham. And she's not quite sure about meeting him, about taking it further than the letter every month or two. She certainly isn't sure whether to believe him, but nonetheless, she follows up on her letter writing and goes to the prison to meet him. And somehow, something about that leads her to go to the courthouse and open up the files on this horrible fire that killed those beautiful children. The fire that has Mr. Willingham waiting to be executed. And so then we get kind of a middle ground here. And it's really fascinating. Really a good thing. Her curiosity is definitely piqued, and she's kind of in over her head. Here she is. She's a teacher, a writer, and now she's looking over a case of a person convicted of murdering his three children. There's a picture of the cot. He's accused of lighting a fire underneath it so the two youngest babies would burn to death. Like it's really a heavy, heavy, heavy-hearted story. And it's also a long one, so give yourself a bit of time. This might take you the better part of an hour to read. And then after we work with Gilbert, this is, you'll know from part one that this guy here is the one who basically said he overheard Willingham's confession, and that kind of put the nail in his coffin, if you will, sealed the bid on his death penalty. And that's a long part. Part three is cool. It starts off going back to 1660. Fascinating story here. I won't take any of the thunder from you. It's really cool. And then we move in kind of a gloss in the history of a lot of, criminal studies and just some very pertinent background for the Willingham case. And as we move ahead, then what's going to happen? More talk back and forth with Willingham. We're going to get to the next part, which is really, really very exciting. I couldn't put it down, and I was angry because I was late. But anyway, part four, this is just months before Willingham is executed. just by luck, one of the most respected fire scientists in the country, Dr. Gerald Hurst, is finally encouraged. This is several years after Suzanne Gilbert met Willingham, and 10 years after he's been, more than 10 years after he's been in jail. Finally, Dr. Hurst opens up the case and begins an investigation. Some really excellent stuff, good background about the history of fire science, extraordinarily good analysis of what happened when that house burned down and those children were killed in the fire. And so this is a really exciting thing. And finally, we get kind of just up to the hour. We're into part 5. We're closing it. And I'm not going to tell you the ending, but it's a really exciting and pretty quick close. And so I don't want to, do any spoiler alert stuff. I think it's a great story. What you'll find out eventually is you'll get a second take. Really, the whole story is laid out in part 1, and then it's revisited in parts 2, 3, 4, and 5. And I just think it's going to be an exciting read for you. I'll leave it at that. We can go over it more when we meet in class.